The crystal chandelier's light caught in Sophia Blackburn's glass of champagne, creating a kaleidoscope of diamonds that danced across her vision moments before the room began to spin. She'd been standing for hours in shoes that pinched her feet, smiling until her cheeks hurt, all while running on nothing but a piece of toast and sheer determination since dawn. The annual Children's Hospital Benefit Gala was the culmination of 6 months of planning, and as the event coordinator, she couldn't afford a single misstep. "Just breathe," she whispered to herself, setting down her barely touched champagne. The grand ballroom of the Metropolitan Hotel was packed with Seattle's elite, all dressed in their finest, checkbooks at the ready. The charity auction had exceeded its goal by nearly double, and the hospital wing they were funding would now include a state-of-the-art rehabilitation center. It was everything Sophia had hoped for, yet the victory felt distant as black spots began to cloud her vision. She tried to make her way toward the exit, but her legs felt like they were moving through quicksand. The voices around her grew muffled, the room tilted, and just as she realized she was going down, strong arms caught her before she hit the marble floor. "I've got you," a deep voice said near her ear, the words steady and sure. Sophia's eyes fluttered open to find herself looking up at a face she didn't recognize. Strong jawline, concerned blue eyes, dark hair slightly mussed as if he'd been running his hands through it. She blinked, disoriented and mortified. "I'm so sorry," she managed, attempting to stand on her own. "I don't know what happened." "You fainted," the stranger said, still supporting most of her weight. "Let's get you somewhere quiet." Before she could protest, he was guiding her through the crowd, which parted easily for him. Sophia noticed people nodding respectfully as he passed, but her fuzzy brain couldn't process why. He led her to a small sitting room off the main hall, away from prying eyes. "Sit," he instructed, helping her to a plush sofa. "When's the last time you ate something substantial?" Sophia's cheeks flushed. "This morning. Maybe. I've been a little busy." The man shook his head and pressed a glass of water into her hand. "Drink this. I'll be right back." As he left, Sophia took a moment to collect herself. She straightened her midnight blue gown, a splurge she'd justified by promising to wear it to multiple events, and checked that her updo hadn't completely fallen apart. Her phone buzzed with messages from her assistant Mia, asking where she'd disappeared to. She quickly texted back that she was fine, just needed a moment. Minutes later, the door opened again, and her rescuer returned with a plate of food and a familiar face in tow. "Sophia!" Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the hospital's chief of pediatrics, rushed to her side. "Connor told me what happened. Are you all right?" Connor. So that was his name. "I'm fine, just embarrassed," Sophia assured her. "The event is going beautifully, and I don't want to cause a scene." "You've done more than enough," Elena said firmly. "The gala is a tremendous success, and now you need to take care of yourself." She turned to the man Connor. "Thank you for looking after her." He nodded, setting down the plate of food. "It was no trouble. Make sure she eats." As he turned to leave, Sophia called out, "Thank you, Connor. I didn't catch your last name?" He paused at the door, a slight smile playing at his lips. "Lockhart. Connor Lockhart." Elena's eyes widened slightly, but Sophia was too lightheaded to notice the reaction. She simply thanked him again as he slipped out the door. "Do you have any idea who that was?" Elena whispered once he was gone. Sophia shook her head, taking a bite of the food he'd brought, a perfect selection of proteins and carbs that her body desperately needed. "That was Connor Lockhart, as in Lockhart Technologies. The Connor Lockhart who just donated $10 million to our hospital." Sophia nearly choked. "The tech billionaire? The one who never attends these kinds of events?" "The very same," Elena confirmed. "And he just spent 15 minutes making sure you didn't end up face down on my ballroom floor." Sophia groaned, covering her face with her hands. "Perfect. I make a complete fool of myself in front of our biggest donor. On the contrary, Elena said with a knowing smile. He seemed quite concerned, more than professional courtesy would require. Sophia dismissed the idea with a wave of her hand. Men like Connor Lockhart didn't look twice at women like her, women who wore the same dress to multiple events and counted every penny to make rent on their modest apartments. He was just being kind. But as she finished her food and prepared to return to her duties, she couldn't help but wonder about the man with the steady hands who'd caught her when she fell. Connor Lockhart slipped out the back entrance of the hotel, loosening his bow tie as his driver opened the car door. These events always drained him, too many people wanting something, too many conversations laden with ulterior motives. He'd only attended tonight because Elena Rodriguez was an old friend, and the children's hospital was a cause close to his heart. He hadn't expected to catch a falling woman in a blue dress who seemed more concerned about the event's success than her own well-being. Most people he encountered at these galas were eager to impress him, to drop hints about partnerships or investments. But Sophia, she hadn't even recognized him. "Back to the penthouse, sir?" his driver asked. Connor hesitated. "Not yet, James. I think I'll go back in for a while." James raised an eyebrow. Connor never extended his time at social functions, but simply nodded and closed the door. Connor straightened his tie and returned to the gala, his eyes scanning the room until he spotted her. She was back at her post near the stage, clipboard in hand, directing staff with quiet efficiency. There was something captivating about her focus, the way she seemed to hold the entire event together through sheer force of will. He made his way toward her, pausing to exchange pleasantries with various acquaintances. When he finally reached her side, she was checking items off a list, completely absorbed in her task. "Feeling better?" he asked. Sophia jumped slightly, her clipboard nearly slipping from her grasp. "Mr. Lockhart, yes, thank you. And thank you again for, well, catching me." "Connor, please. And it was my pleasure. Though I'd prefer if you didn't make a habit of fainting at charity events." She laughed, a genuine sound that made her eyes crinkle at the corners. "I'll do my best. Though I can't promise anything if they keep scheduling them during dinner hours." "Perhaps we could solve that problem," he said, surprising himself with the suggestion. "Would you have dinner with me? After the event wraps up?" Sophia blinked, clearly caught off guard. "Dinner? With you? I mean, why?" It wasn't the response he was used to, which made it all the more refreshing. "Because I'd like to continue our conversation without the interruption of you passing out. And because I rarely meet someone at these functions who doesn't immediately try to pitch me a business idea." A small smile tugged at her lips. "Well, now that you mention it, I do have this app idea. See? Humor. Another rarity." He found himself smiling back, genuinely. Sophia glanced at her watch. "The gala ends in an hour. I'll need to oversee the breakdown and make sure everything is settled with the venue." "I can wait," Connor said, realizing he meant it. She studied him for a moment, as if trying to solve a puzzle. "All right. Dinner. But nothing fancy. I've had enough caviar and champagne for one night." "I know just the place." Just as Sophia had warned, it took her nearly 2 hours after the gala officially ended to finish her responsibilities. Connor waited patiently, occasionally checking emails on his phone but mostly watching her work the way she thanked each staff member personally, her attention to detail as she ensured nothing was left behind, her genuine warmth when saying goodnight to the hotel manager. When she finally approached him, she'd changed from her gown into a simple black dress and flat shoes, her hair now falling in loose waves around her shoulders. She looked younger, more relaxed, and even more beautiful. "Sorry to keep you waiting," she said. "I'm ready if you still want to grab dinner." "Starving," he replied, leading her outside where James waited with the car. "This is yours?" Sophia asked, eyeing the sleek black Bentley. "Company car," Connor said with a shrug, not mentioning that the company was his. James opened the door for them, and once they were settled in the back seat, Connor gave him the address of a small diner in Fremont that served breakfast all day and night. It was one of his favorite places in the city, unpretentious, with the best pancakes he'd ever tasted, and most importantly, a place where he was treated like any other customer. "So," Sophia said as they drove, "Elena told me you're the Connor Lockhart of Lockhart Technologies." "Guilty as charged," he admitted. "Why didn't you say anything when I clearly had no idea who you were?" "It was refreshing," he said honestly. "Do you know how rare it is for someone to see me as just another person at an event?" She studied him with those perceptive green eyes. "Must be lonely." The observation startled him. Most people envied his wealth and success. Few considered the isolation that came with it. "It can be," he acknowledged, "but I'm not looking for sympathy. I've been fortunate in many ways." "Fortunate enough to eat at fancy restaurants every night? Yet you're taking me to a diner?" "The heart wants what it wants," he said with a grin. "And right now, mine wants pancakes." Laughter bubbled from her again, and Connor found himself wanting to hear that sound more often. The diner was everything Sophia needed after the formality of the gala. Bright lights, vinyl booths, and the smell of bacon and coffee filled the air. They slid into a corner booth, and Connor immediately looked at ease in a way he hadn't at the hotel. "I come here at least once a week," he confessed as they looked over the massive laminated menus. "Usually after late nights at the office when I need comfort food." "I wouldn't have pegged you as a midnight pancake guy," Sophia said, finding herself genuinely intrigued by this complex man. "There's a lot you wouldn't peg me as," he replied, a hint of challenge in his voice. They ordered pancakes for him, a Denver omelet for her, and as they waited for their food, Connor asked about her work. "I've been coordinating events for about 5 years now," she explained. "Started with small corporate functions, worked my way up to galas like tonight's. I love it, actually. Creating experiences that raise money for good causes, seeing all the pieces come together. Even when it means forgetting to eat?" She gave him a rueful smile. "Occupational hazard. I get so caught up making sure everyone else is taken care of that I forget about myself sometimes." "That seems to be a pattern with you," he observed. "You were more concerned about disrupting the gala than the fact that you'd fainted." Their food arrived, momentarily pausing the conversation. Sophia realized just how hungry she was and dug in enthusiastically. Connor watched her with amusement. "What about you?" she asked between bites. "Lockhart Technologies makes what exactly?" "I probably shouldn't admit I don't know." "Don't worry, most people don't understand it either," he said. "We develop integrated AI solutions for healthcare. Our systems help doctors diagnose rare conditions, predict patient outcomes, streamline hospital operations, that sort of thing." "So that's why you support the Children's Hospital?" He nodded, cutting into his stack of pancakes. "My younger sister had leukemia when we were kids. She spent a lot of time in hospitals. It shaped my perspective on what matters." "Is she okay now?" Sophia asked gently. A shadow passed over his face. "She didn't make it. She was 8. "I'm so sorry," Sophia said, instinctively reaching across the table to touch his hand. The gesture seemed to surprise both of them, and she quickly pulled back. "That must have been devastating." "It was a long time ago," he said. "But it's why I started the company. Our technology might have helped her, or at least made her time more comfortable." He looked up, his expression lighter. "But enough about sad histories. Tell me something not on your professional resume, Sophia Blackburn." She took a sip of her coffee, considering. "I collect vintage postcards. Weird, I know, but I love the glimpses into other lives, other times, the messages people sent when they had to be concise." "That's not weird at all," Connor said. "It's fascinating, actually. Do you have a favorite?" A 1940s postcard from Seattle to Chicago. It just says, "The mountains are as beautiful as you said. I wish you were here to see them with me." She smiled at the memory. Something about it always seemed so wistful to me. They talked easily after that, about books they'd read, places they'd traveled, the best coffee shops in Seattle. By the time they'd finished their food, Sophia was surprised to see that 2 hours had passed. The conversation had flowed without effort, and she'd forgotten entirely about the circumstances that had brought them together. "I should probably get home," she said reluctantly when they'd lingered over their coffee, long enough that the waitress had refilled their cups 3 times. Connor nodded, signaling for the check. When Sophia reached for her purse, he shook his head. "This one's on me. You can get the next one." The implication that there would be a next time hung between them, unaddressed, but not unwelcome. He paid, leaving a generous tip, and they stepped out into the cool Seattle night. "Where to?" he asked as they approached his waiting car. "Capitol Hill," she replied, "the old Victorian apartments on 15th. The drive was quiet but comfortable. When they pulled up to her building, a converted house with charming but clearly aging details, Connor stepped out and walked her to the door. "Thank you for dinner," Sophia said, suddenly feeling shy. "And for catching me earlier." "Thank you for not recognizing me," he replied. "It was the highlight of my evening." She laughed. "Well, in that case, I'll be sure to forget who you are regularly." Connor took a step closer, his expression growing serious. "I'd like to see you again, Sophia. Properly, not just because you fell into my arms at a charity function." Her heart fluttered traitorously in her chest. "I'd like that too." He reached into his pocket and handed her his card, simple, elegant, with just his name and a phone number. "My personal line, not my assistant's, not my office, just me." Sophia took it, her fingers brushing his. "Good night, Connor Lockhart." "Good night, Sophia Blackburn." She watched as he returned to his car and drove away, the business card still warm in her hand. It wasn't until she was inside her apartment that she allowed herself to grin widely, pressing the card to her chest like a love-struck teenager. It had been a strange night, but perhaps fainting at a charity gala wasn't the worst thing that could happen to a girl. Sophia woke the next morning to her phone buzzing insistently. She groaned, reaching for it blindly, her eyes still closed against the morning light filtering through her curtains. It was Mia, her assistant, calling for the 3rd time in a row. "Hello?" she mumbled, still half asleep. "Sophia. Finally, have you seen the society page?" Mia's voice was pitched higher than usual, excitement evident in every syllable. "What? No, I just woke up." "Well, you might want to take a look. There's a picture of you and Connor Lockhart, you know, the billionaire who never gets photographed. It's everywhere. The caption says, 'Tech Titan catches falling event planner at Children's Hospital Gala.' People are losing their minds." Sophia sat bolt upright, suddenly wide awake. "What? How? There weren't any photographers around when that happened." "Someone had a phone camera," Mia explained. "And then someone recognized you two at Bernie's diner later. The gossip columnists are having a field day speculating about how the most eligible bachelor in Seattle spent the evening with an unknown event planner." Groaning, Sophia buried her face in her pillow. "This can't be happening." "Oh, it's happening. And Soph? Your phone's going to start ringing off the hook any minute. The office has already gotten 3 calls from potential clients asking for the planner who works with Connor Lockhart. We don't work together. I literally met him yesterday." "Well, maybe you should," Mia suggested. "This could be amazing for business." The thought made Sophia's stomach twist uncomfortably. Last night had been special. She'd felt a genuine connection with Connor, not as a billionaire tech innovator, but as a person. The idea of leveraging that connection for business felt wrong. I'm not using him for publicity, Mia. Who said anything about using him? I'm just saying, if people want to hire you because they saw a photo, that's their business. Anyway, I've got to run. Just wanted to give you a heads up before you walked outside and got ambushed by questions. After hanging up, Sophia reluctantly pulled up the society page on her phone. Sure enough, there it was, a slightly blurry photo of her looking pale and startled in Connor's arms, his face a mask of concern. The second photo showed them sitting in Bernie's diner, laughing over their late-night meal. Her phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. Good morning. Hope you're feeling better today. Seems we've made the news. I'm sorry about that, not exactly the low profile I try to maintain. CL. She stared at the message for a long moment before typing back. Just saw it. Mortifying. My assistant says potential clients are already calling. I promise I'm not using this for publicity. His response came quickly. I never thought you were. Have dinner with me again tonight? Sophia bit her lip, considering. The sensible thing would be to take a step back. Let the gossip die down. But the memory of their easy conversation, the way he'd looked at her across the table. Yes, but somewhere less public this time? My thoughts exactly. I'll pick you up at 7. Sophia spent the day fielding calls and emails, most related to the charity gala's success, but some unsubtly inquiring about her relationship with Connor Lockhart. She deflected as professionally as possible, focusing on the record-breaking fundraising numbers instead. By the time she returned to her apartment to get ready for dinner, she was exhausted from the unwanted attention. At precisely 7 p.m., her buzzer rang. When she opened the door, Connor stood there in casual dark jeans and a gray sweater that made his blue eyes seem even more intense. He looked far more relaxed than he had in his tuxedo, and infinitely more approachable. Hi, she said, suddenly feeling shy again. Hi, he replied, his eyes taking in her simple wrap dress and boots. You look beautiful. Thanks. So do you. I mean, handsome. You look handsome. She winced at her own awkwardness. Connor smiled, seemingly charmed by her nervousness. I thought we might eat in tonight. My place has a decent view and, more importantly, no photographers. That sounds perfect, Sophia agreed, grabbing her coat and purse. They rode in comfortable silence to a sleek high-rise in downtown Seattle. The building's lobby was all marble and glass, with a discreet security desk where the guard nodded respectfully to Connor. The private elevator required a key card and fingerprint scan. Tight security, Sophia observed as they ascended. Necessary evil, Connor said with a shrug. The price of privacy. When the elevator doors opened, they stepped directly into a spacious penthouse apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city and Elliott Bay beyond, the sunset painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. The space was surprisingly warm despite its modern architecture, comfortable furniture, bookshelves filled with well-worn volumes, and what looked like original artwork on the walls. This is... Sophia searched for the right word. Home, Connor finished for her. Not what you expected? I'm not sure what I expected, she admitted. Something more sterile, maybe. This feels lived in. That's the highest compliment you could give, he said, leading her to the kitchen area where he'd already set out ingredients. I hope you don't mind, but I thought we could cook together. I find it more relaxing than restaurant dining. Sophia's surprise must have shown on her face, because he laughed. Another thing that doesn't fit the billionaire stereotype? You have to admit, most wealthy tech executives probably don't cook their own meals. True, but most wealthy tech executives didn't grow up in a household where cooking was therapy. He handed her a glass of wine. My mom taught me. After my sister died, we spent a lot of time in the kitchen together. It was how we processed our grief. Sophia took the glass, touched by his willingness to share something so personal. What are we making? Risotto, he said, pulling out arborio rice and stock. Simple but satisfying. You can stir while I chop vegetables. They moved around the kitchen with surprising ease, falling into a natural rhythm. Connor was obviously comfortable here, and Sophia found herself relaxing as she stirred the rice, adding stock ladle by ladle as he'd instructed. They talked about safer topics than the morning's gossip favorite recipes, childhood memories, the view from his windows. Did you always know you wanted to go into event planning? Connor asked as he grated Parmesan cheese. Sophia shook her head. I actually started in nonprofit administration. I was working for a youth arts program, and when their event coordinator quit suddenly, I volunteered to take over their annual fundraiser. Something just clicked. I loved the logistics, the creativity, seeing it all come together. You're good at it, Connor said. Last night's gala was exceptionally well executed. Until I fainted into the arms of the biggest donor, she said with a self-deprecating smile. I'd call that a highlight, not a flaw. His eyes met hers, and something electric passed between them. The moment was interrupted by the timer dinging. Connor broke the gaze first, turning to take the risotto off the heat and add the final ingredients. They carried their plates to the dining table positioned near the windows, the city now twinkling with lights below them. This is incredible, Sophia said after her first bite. You're full of surprises, Connor Lockhart. I try to keep people guessing, he said with a smile. Speaking of which, how was your day of unexpected fame? Sophia groaned. Bizarre. I've never had so many people interested in a charity gala's success. Though I suppose the money we raised is the real win, regardless of how we're making headlines. Connor's expression turned thoughtful. Does it bother you, being associated with me this way? She considered the question carefully. Not for the reasons you might think. I'm not uncomfortable being seen with you, quite the opposite. I don't want whatever this is between us to be reduced to a gossip column item. Billionaire and nobody have dinner. News at 11. You're hardly a nobody, Connor said firmly. And I understand. I've spent years keeping my private life private for similar reasons. People have preconceptions about what it means to be wealthy, about the kind of person I must be. Like assuming you don't cook risotto, Sophia said with a small smile. Exactly. He took a sip of his wine. For what it's worth? I didn't ask you to dinner because you're the first person in years not to recognize me, though that was refreshing. I asked because in the few minutes we spoke, I found you more interesting than people I've known for decades. The sincerity in his voice made her chest tighten. I felt the same way. Still do. They finished dinner and moved to the living room, where Connor put on some soft jazz and they continued talking. Sophia learned about his journey from grief-stricken teenager to MIT graduate to reluctant tech mogul. He'd started Lockhart Technologies with a single-minded focus on improving medical diagnostic capabilities, inspired by his sister's misdiagnosis that had delayed her treatment. The company was never supposed to become what it is now, he admitted. I just wanted to solve a problem. The success. The money that was secondary. But you've done good things with it, Sophia pointed out. The children's hospital wing, for one. I try. It still feels, I don't know, like it's not enough sometimes. I understand that feeling, she said. After every event, no matter how successful, I always think about what more I could have done, how I could have raised more money or created a better experience. Connor nodded, leaning forward. That's exactly it. The constant feeling that success isn't measured by what you've accomplished, but by what you haven't yet done. It's exhausting, Sophia admitted. But also what drives us, he said, reaching for her hand. The touch was gentle, questioning. I think that's why I feel so comfortable with you. You understand the weight of responsibility, even if the scale is different. Sophia looked down at their joined hands, then back up to his face. I do. And I feel comfortable with you too. More than I should after just 2 meetings. Connor's thumb traced circles on her palm. I've never believed in arbitrary timelines for how people should connect. The air between them seemed to thicken, charged with possibility. Sophia was acutely aware of how close they were sitting, how his eyes kept dropping to her lips, how her own heart was racing in her chest. Connor, she said softly, I should probably go soon. It's getting late. He nodded, though he looked reluctant. Of course. I'll drive you home. Thank you for dinner. It was perfect. Next time, you cook, he said with a smile, and the simple assumption that there would be a next time made her stomach flutter. As they rode the elevator down to the parking garage, Sophia found herself wishing the evening didn't have to end. There was something special happening between them, something she hadn't felt in a long time, if ever. But she also knew they needed to proceed carefully. The outside world's interest in them added a complication neither had anticipated. Connor drove her home himself this time. No driver in sight. His car a different one from the night before. Something sleek and European that probably cost more than Sophia would make in 5 years purred through the quiet streets. When they reached her apartment, he walked her to the door again. I'd like to see you this weekend, he said, his voice low. There's a place on Bainbridge Island I think you'd enjoy. We could take the ferry over. Spend the day away from the city. I'd like that, Sophia said, meaning it. Saturday? Saturday, he confirmed. Then slowly, giving her plenty of time to pull away, he leaned in and pressed a gentle kiss to her cheek. Good night, Sophia. His lips were warm against her skin, and she found herself turning her head slightly, their mouths almost brushing. Good night, Connor. As she watched him drive away for the second night in a row, Sophia couldn't help but wonder what she was getting herself into. Connor Lockhart was unlike anyone she'd ever met, thoughtful, brilliant, surprisingly down-to-earth despite his wealth. But she wasn't naive enough to think that dating a billionaire would be simple, especially now that the gossip columns had caught wind of them. Still, as she got ready for bed that night, she found herself looking forward to Saturday with an eagerness that both thrilled and terrified her. Saturday dawned clear and crisp, perfect weather for a ferry ride. Sophia had spent an embarrassing amount of time deciding what to wear before settling on comfortable jeans, a soft sweater, and a scarf that brought out the green in her eyes. She'd just finished applying a light coat of mascara when her buzzer rang. Connor stood on her doorstep in similar casual attire, dark jeans, a blue button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, and a leather jacket that looked butter-soft with age. He was holding a paper bag that smelled enticingly of fresh pastry. I brought breakfast, he said by way of greeting. There's a bakery near me that makes these almond croissants that are worth getting up early for. You're speaking my language, Sophia replied, inviting him in. Just let me grab my jacket. Connor looked around her apartment with undisguised interest while she gathered her things. It was small but thoughtfully decorated, with bookshelves lining one wall, a cozy reading nook by the bay window, and framed vintage postcards arranged in a collage. These are your postcards, he said, examining them closely. They're wonderful. Just a small part of the collection, she admitted. Most are in albums, but those are my favorites. He pointed to one in particular, a black and white image of Pike Place Market from the 1950s. This one's fantastic. The composition is perfect. That's the first one I ever bought, Sophia said, coming to stand beside him. At a flea market when I was 16. I've been collecting ever since. Connor turned to look at her, their faces close. I love that you have a passion that has nothing to do with your work. Something just for you. Do you? Have something just for you? He smiled slightly. I sail. Nothing fancy, just a small boat I keep at Shilshole Marina. Being on the water, it clears my head. Sophia could picture it easily, Connor alone on a sailboat, the wind in his hair, away from the pressures of his company and his public image. The image fit him somehow. "Ready?" he asked, offering his hand. She took it, allowing herself to enjoy the simple pleasure of his fingers interlaced with hers. "Ready." They drove to the ferry terminal, joining the line of cars waiting to board. Connor had packed a small cooler for lunch later, explaining that he wanted to show her a particular spot on the island that was perfect for picnics. On the ferry, they stood at the railing, watching Seattle's skyline recede as they crossed the Sound. The wind whipped Sophia's hair around her face, and she laughed as she tried to tame it. "Hopeless," she said, giving up. "Beautiful," Connor countered, tucking a strand behind her ear. The simple touch sent warmth cascading through her. 3 days. She'd known him for 3 days, and already he was affecting her in ways no one ever had. Bainbridge Island was charming, with its mix of forest, waterfront, and small-town atmosphere. Connor drove them through winding roads until they reached a small state park overlooking the water. They hiked a short trail to a secluded overlook, where they could see both the Olympic Mountains and, in the distance, Seattle's skyline. "This is breathtaking," Sophia said, taking in the view. "I found it by accident," Connor told her as he spread a blanket on a flat rock. "I was having a particularly rough day, dealing with investors who wanted to take the company in a direction I didn't agree with. I just got in my car and drove onto the ferry without any plan. Ended up here." "Your escape," she said, understanding. He nodded, unpacking their lunch artisan sandwiches, fresh fruit, and local cheese. Sometimes you need to physically remove yourself from a situation to see it clearly. They ate, talked, and occasionally lapsed into comfortable silence, simply enjoying the view and each other's company. Connor asked about her family, and Sophia told him about growing up in Portland with parents who owned a small bookstore. "They're still there, still running the shop, though online retailers have made it harder," she explained. "My older brother helps them now. He was always the one who was supposed to stay, carry on the family business." "And you were always meant to leave?" Connor asked perceptively. "I think so. I love books, love the store, but I always wanted something bigger, I guess. More dynamic." She plucked a blade of grass, twirling it between her fingers. "What about your parents? Are they still in Seattle?" Connor shook his head. "My father passed away 5 years ago, heart attack. My mother lives in Arizona now, near my aunt. The Seattle weather was getting to her joints." "Do you see her often?" "Not as much as I should," he admitted. "We talk weekly, though. She's my biggest supporter and harshest critic, all rolled into one." "The best mothers usually are," Sophia said with a smile. As the afternoon progressed, they explored more of the island, stopping at a small art gallery where Connor purchased a painting without even looking at the price tag, a habit Sophia found both impressive and slightly alarming. They wandered through shops, and in one, Connor caught her admiring a vintage postcard of the Bainbridge Ferry from the 1960s. "You should get it," he encouraged. "A memento of today." "It's overpriced here," she said, placing it back in the display. "I can probably find it for half at one of my usual sources." Connor looked at her with newfound respect. "Savvy collector." "Budget-conscious collector," she corrected with a laugh. Later, as they waited for the ferry to take them back to Seattle, Connor bought them both ice cream cones despite the cool temperature. They sat on a bench, watching the water and licking drips from their wrists like children. "This has been..." Sophia searched for the right word. "Perfect." "It has," Connor agreed, his eyes on her face. "Thank you for coming with me. Thank you for asking me." There was a beat of silence filled with unspoken possibilities. "Sophia," Connor said, his voice serious now. "I want to be clear about something. I like you. A lot. More than makes sense given how little time we've known each other. And I'd like to continue seeing you, if that's something you want too. Her heart raced at his directness. I do. Want that, I mean. But there are complications, he continued. My life comes with scrutiny. Privacy is hard to come by. Those photos the other night were just the beginning if we continue to see each other. I'm not afraid of a little attention, Sophia said, though the thought did make her nervous. It can be more than a little, Connor warned. And not all of it is pleasant. People will make assumptions about you, about why you're with me. Sophia nodded slowly, understanding what he wasn't explicitly saying. People would assume she was after his money, his status. I'm not naive, Connor. I know what I'd be walking into. The question is, do you think it's worth it? The complications, I mean. His answer was immediate and sure. Yes. Absolutely yes. The certainty in his voice made her breath catch. Then so do I. The ferry horn sounded, breaking the moment. As they boarded for the return journey, Connor's hand found hers again, and they stood together watching the island recede, the future stretching before them like the wide expanse of water full of possibilities and unknown depths. Over the following weeks, Sophia and Connor fell into a rhythm that seemed to defy the brevity of their acquaintance. They saw each other nearly every day, quick lunches when their schedules allowed, quiet dinners at his penthouse or her apartment, weekend explorations of the city and surrounding areas. Connor introduced her to sailing, taking her out on his modest but beautifully maintained sloop. Sophia had expected something ostentatious, but the sailboat was clearly chosen for function and joy rather than status. She watched him on the water, confident and at peace in a way he rarely seemed on land, and fell a little harder for this man who contained such multitudes. In turn, she took him to her favorite flea markets and antique shops, showing him the thrill of the hunt for vintage treasures. Connor, who could buy anything he wanted without consideration of cost, found himself genuinely excited when they uncovered a rare postcard from the 1920s, depicting the original Lockhart family hardware store, the humble beginning of what would eventually evolve into his tech empire. This is incredible, he'd said, examining the faded image. My grandfather is probably in this picture somewhere. Sophia had smiled at his childlike wonder. See? Sometimes the best things aren't about the price tag. The media attention Connor had warned her about did materialize. Gossip columns regularly featured blurry photos of them at restaurants or walking along the waterfront. Tech billionaire's mystery woman identified, one headline blared, followed by a mostly accurate but slightly sensationalized account of Sophia's career and background. She tried not to let it bother her, but it was strange to see her life reduced to bullet points, her worth measured by her association with Connor rather than her own accomplishments. Connor was unfailingly supportive, apologizing for the intrusion while assuring her it would eventually die down once they were no longer novelty. They'll find someone more interesting to focus on, he promised after a particularly invasive article speculated about whether she was a gold digger. This is just the news cycle. I know, Sophia said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. It's just, my work is starting to be affected. Clients are hiring me because they think I have some connection to you, not because of my skills. Connor frowned. That's not fair to you. Life isn't fair, she said with a shrug. It's just something I need to navigate. The real test came about 2 months into their relationship, when Connor invited Sophia to be his date for the annual Lockhart Technologies Gala, a high-profile event that drew tech industry leaders, investors, and media from around the world. You don't have to say yes, he told her as they sat on her couch, sharing takeout and watching old movies. It's a lot of pressure and a lot of eyes will be on you. Sophia poked at her pad thai, considering. Will it help or hurt you if I come? Professionally? I mean. Connor looked surprised by the question. Neither. My professional reputation stands on its own. This isn't about business for me, Sophia. I want you there because I want to share that part of my life with you. But only if you're comfortable. His sincerity decided her. Then yes, I'd love to come. The night of the gala arrived with a flurry of preparation. Connor had offered to send a stylist to help Sophia get ready, but she'd declined, preferring to handle it herself. She'd splurged on a new dress, a deep emerald gown that complemented her coloring and made her feel confident. Her mother's vintage earrings and a simple clutch completed the look. When Connor arrived to pick her up, his expression of stunned appreciation was worth every penny she'd spent. "You are breathtaking," he said, his voice slightly rough. "You clean up pretty well yourself," she replied, taking in his perfectly tailored tuxedo. The gala was held at the Lockhart Technologies headquarters, the sleek modern building transformed into an elegant venue. As they entered, Sophia felt the weight of curious stares. Connor kept his hand at the small of her back, a reassuring presence as he guided her through the crowd, introducing her to key people. "Sophia, this is Marcus Chen, our head of research and development. Marcus, this is Sophia Blackburn, the event planner," Marcus said with a knowing smile. "Connor hasn't stopped talking about you for weeks." "All good things, I hope," Sophia replied, feeling herself relax slightly at Marcus's friendly demeanor. "Excessively complimentary," Marcus assured her. "It's nice to see Connor with someone who makes him smile. He's been far too serious for far too long." As the evening progressed, Sophia met more of Connor's colleagues and business associates. Most were welcoming, though she detected occasional undercurrents of curiosity, or, in a few cases, thinly veiled judgment. Connor remained attentive, never leaving her side for long, his pride in introducing her evident. During dinner, they were seated with the company's board of directors and their spouses. The conversation flowed easily, covering everything from the company's latest innovations to Seattle's perpetual traffic problems. Sophia held her own, asking insightful questions about the technology and sharing stories from her event planning experiences. "Connor tells us you coordinated the Children's Hospital Gala," one of the board members' wives said. "That must have been quite an undertaking." "It was a labor of love," Sophia replied. "The hospital does incredible work." "Indeed," the woman agreed. "Though I hear the highlight was your dramatic introduction to our Connor here." Sophia felt her cheeks warm at the reference to her fainting spell. "Not my finest moment, but it worked out rather well in the end." Connor squeezed her hand under the table, a silent show of support. After dinner came speeches, including one from Connor about the company's vision for the future. Sophia watched him on stage, commanding and passionate as he spoke about using technology to solve meaningful problems. This was a side of him she'd glimpsed only in private conversations, the visionary who had built an empire not for wealth, but for impact. "We have the capability to change lives," he was saying. "And with that capability comes responsibility. At Lockhart Technologies, we choose to use our resources to address real human needs, not just create the next shiny object." The crowd applauded enthusiastically, and Sophia felt a surge of pride for this man who cared so deeply about making a difference. As the formal part of the evening gave way to dancing and mingling, Connor led Sophia onto the dance floor. They moved together naturally, as if they'd been dancing for years instead of just this once. "You're good at this," she murmured, impressed by his easy confidence. "Mandatory dance lessons as a teenager," he admitted with a grin. "My mother insisted. Said no son of hers would step on a woman's toes at formal functions." Sophia laughed. "I like your mother more and more." "She'd like you too," Connor said, his expression softening. "She's been asking to meet you." The implication that this relationship was serious enough for family introductions hung between them, neither acknowledging it directly but both aware of its significance. As the song ended, Connor was approached by an older man who clearly wanted to speak with him privately. Connor looked to Sophia apologetically. Would you mind terribly if I stepped away for a few minutes? Gerald is one of our major investors, and he rarely attends these functions. Of course not, Sophia assured him. I'll get a drink and enjoy the people watching. Connor pressed a quick kiss to her cheek before following Gerald to a quieter corner of the room. Sophia made her way to the bar, where she ordered a sparkling water with lime. As she waited, she felt someone approach and stand beside her. You must be the event planner, a cool female voice said. Sophia turned to find herself face to face with an elegantly dressed woman in her late 30s, her blonde hair swept into a perfect chignon, diamonds glittering at her throat and ears. Sophia Blackburn, she confirmed, offering her hand. The woman took it with a perfectly manicured grip. Vanessa Hartley. Connor and I go way back. Something in her tone made Sophia's instincts prickle. It's nice to meet you. Vanessa murmured non-committally. You've caused quite a stir, you know. Connor doesn't usually bring dates to these functions, and certainly not women he's known for such a brief period. Sophia accepted her drink from the bartender, taking a moment to compose herself. Connor and I may have a brief history, but it's been a meaningful one. I'm sure it has, Vanessa said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Connor has always had a soft spot for community service, shall we say? His charitable nature extends to his personal life. The implication was unmistakable, and Sophia felt heat rise in her cheeks not from embarrassment, but from anger. I think there's been a misunderstanding, she said evenly. Connor and I are together because we choose to be, not out of charity or any other motivation you might be implying. Vanessa's smile turned pitying. Of course, that's what all the temporary diversions believe. Just don't get too comfortable. Men like Connor eventually return to women of their own caliber. Before Sophia could respond, she felt a warm hand at her back. Vanessa? Connor said, his voice cool. I see you've met Sophia. Just getting acquainted, Vanessa replied, her demeanor instantly shifting to warm familiarity. She's delightful, Connor, though perhaps a bit out of her depth here. Connor's expression hardened. On the contrary, Sophia is exactly where she belongs with me, which is more than I can say for some people who mistake past acquaintance for present relevance. The rebuke was subtle but unmistakable. Vanessa's smile faltered. Always the gentleman, she said tightly, even when delivering insults. Enjoy your evening. She walked away with perfect posture, leaving an uncomfortable silence in her wake. I'm sorry about that, Connor said quietly. Vanessa and I dated briefly years ago. She's never quite accepted that it didn't work out. She made that quite clear, Sophia replied, trying to keep her voice light despite the knot in her stomach. Apparently, I'm a temporary diversion from women of your caliber. Connor's jaw tightened. That's ridiculous. Vanessa's idea of caliber is measured entirely by net worth and social standing, neither of which has anything to do with what matters between people. But she's not entirely wrong, is she? Sophia said, the insecurity she'd been keeping at bay finally surfacing. We do come from different worlds. Eventually, that gap might matter. Only if we let it, Connor said firmly, turning her to face him. Sophia, I don't care about your bank balance or your social connections. I care about you, your kindness, your intelligence, your passion for what you do. That's what matters to me. His earnestness was so evident that Sophia felt her doubts begin to recede. I know. It just hit a nerve, I guess. Sometimes I wonder what you see in me when you could have anyone. Connor's expression softened. That's just it. I don't want anyone. I want you. Specifically, uniquely you. Before she could respond, he took her hand. Come with me. I want to show you something. He led her away from the main gala, through corridors and up an elevator to the top floor of the building. They emerged onto a rooftop garden, a hidden oasis above the city, with trees and planters, comfortable seating areas, and twinkling lights strung overhead. "This is my favorite place in the building," Connor said, guiding her to a bench with a view of the Seattle skyline. "I come up here when I need perspective." "It's beautiful," Sophia said, genuinely impressed. "Like a secret garden in the sky." "Exactly." He sat beside her, taking both her hands in his. "Sophia, I need you to understand something. My life before you was compartmentalized. Work in one box, sailing in another, occasional dating in yet another. Everything neat, controlled, separated." She nodded, waiting for him to continue. "Then you literally fell into my arms, and suddenly all those neat compartments started blurring together. You've become part of everything I think about you when I'm in meetings. I want to show you things I see when we're apart. I find myself planning my schedule around opportunities to see you." "I feel the same way," Sophia admitted softly. "People like Vanessa can't understand that," Connor continued. "They see relationships as transactions, what status or advantage can be gained. But what we have, it's not like that. It's real and messy and wonderful." Sophia felt tears prick at her eyes. "It is wonderful, isn't it? Even with the complications." "Especially with the complications," he said with a small smile. "They're part of what makes it real." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Sophia's heart skipped a beat, though she knew it was too soon for what such boxes usually contained. "This isn't a proposal," Connor clarified, seeming to read her thoughts. "At least, not that kind. But it is a promise." He opened the box to reveal a delicate silver bracelet with a single charm, a tiny vintage postcard. "Connor," Sophia breathed, touching the charm gently. "It's perfect." "I had it made for you," he explained as he fastened it around her wrist. "The charm opens, actually. Look inside." She carefully opened the miniature postcard to find microscopic writing. "The view is better with you beside me." "It's what I would have written on that 1940s postcard you told me about," Connor said. "The one from Seattle to Chicago." Sophia felt a tear escape and slide down her cheek. "This is the most thoughtful gift anyone has ever given me." Connor wiped the tear away with his thumb. "I love you, Sophia Blackburn. I know it's fast, and I know we still have things to figure out, but I'm in love with you." The words hung in the air between them, honest and vulnerable. Sophia felt something settle in her chest, a certainty that had been building since that first night at the diner. "I love you too," she said, the words coming easily, naturally. "So much it scares me sometimes." Connor pulled her close, his kiss gentle at first, then deepening with a passion that left her breathless. When they finally parted, they stayed close, foreheads touching. "Should we go back to the gala?" Sophia asked eventually, though she was reluctant to leave their private sanctuary. Connor smiled, a hint of mischief in his eyes. "We could, or we could sneak out the private elevator and go get pancakes at Bernie's." Sophia laughed. "Ditching your own company gala for diner food? What will people say?" "That I have excellent priorities," he replied, standing and offering his hand. "What do you say? Escape with me?" Looking up at him, this brilliant, kind, unexpected man who had crashed into her life when she literally couldn't stand on her own, Sophia made the easiest decision of her life. "Always," she said, taking his hand and rising to her feet. As they slipped away from the gala, laughing like teenagers playing hooky, Sophia thought about how sometimes the most beautiful journeys begin with a moment of weakness. Her fainting spell had been embarrassing, but it had led her to this, to him. And that made it perfect, complications and all. 6 months later, Sophia stood in the middle of her apartment surrounded by boxes, taping up the last of her kitchen items. The place looked bare without her books, her postcards, her collected treasures that made it home. But it wasn't home anymore. It was just a stopping point on the way to somewhere new. Her phone buzzed with a text from Connor. "Movers on their way up. You ready for this?" She smiled. Typing back. "Ready as I'll ever be." The decision to move in together had come naturally after months of splitting their time between two places. Connor had offered to buy them a new home altogether, somewhere that's ours from the beginning. But Sophia had been hesitant to let him make such a large purchase for them. His penthouse was beautiful and had plenty of space. It made more sense for her to move there, at least for now. Connor had embraced the idea wholeheartedly, clearing out half his closet, converting his rarely used home office into a workspace for her, and installing special shelving for her postcard collection. "Consider it an investment in our future," he'd said when she protested the expense. Their future. The phrase still gave Sophia butterflies. A knock at the door announced the movers' arrival. As they began carrying out boxes, Sophia took one last walk through the apartment, saying goodbye to the space that had been hers alone. It was bittersweet, but the excitement of what lay ahead overshadowed any melancholy. Connor arrived just as the movers were loading the last few items. He greeted Sophia with a kiss, his eyes taking in her slightly wistful expression. "Having second thoughts?" he asked gently. She shook her head. "Not about us. Just saying goodbye to a chapter, I guess. We'll write a better one," he promised, pulling her into his arms. Together. The move went smoothly, and by evening, Sophia's belongings were integrated into Connor's now their home. They celebrated with takeout on the floor amid half-unpacked boxes, sharing fortune cookies and dreams for the space they now shared. Life together proved easier than either had anticipated. They established routines that accommodated both their schedules: morning coffee on the balcony when weather permitted, alternating cooking responsibilities, quiet evenings reading side by side. Connor respected Sophia's independence, never making her feel like a guest in his home or life. And Sophia embraced the parts of his world she could, while maintaining her own identity and career. That career was flourishing. After the initial flurry of attention due to her relationship with Connor, Sophia had established herself firmly on her own merits. Her event planning business had expanded, allowing her to hire 2 assistants and focus on the clients and causes she cared most about. She was currently preparing for her biggest challenge yet, a multi-city fundraising tour for a children's literacy foundation, culminating in a gala at the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. "I still can't believe they chose my proposal," she told Connor one evening as they shared a quiet dinner at home. "It's such a huge opportunity." "I can believe it," Connor replied. "Your vision for the event series is brilliant. Literary-themed experiences in historic libraries across the country. It's perfect for their mission." Sophia smiled, still getting used to his unwavering confidence in her. "It means a lot of travel over the next few months, though. Are you sure you're okay with that?" "Of course," he said, reaching for her hand across the table. "Your success matters to me as much as my own. Besides, I might join you for a few of the stops. I've been meaning to visit our Boston office anyway." His support was one of the many reasons she loved him so deeply. Connor never treated her work as less important than his, despite the vast difference in the scale of their operations. He celebrated her wins and comforted her through setbacks, just as she did for him. Their relationship had deepened in other ways too. Connor had introduced Sophia to his mother during a trip to Arizona, a meeting that had gone remarkably well despite Sophia's nerves. Connor Lockhart was a warm, straightforward woman who had embraced Sophia with genuine affection. "You make him happy," she'd said simply. "That's all that matters to me." In turn, Sophia had taken Connor to Portland to meet her parents and brother. The visit had been slightly more complicated. Her family was initially overwhelmed by Connor's status, despite his efforts to downplay it. But by the end of the weekend, they'd warmed to him, especially after he spent hours discussing rare first editions with her father and helping her mother reorganize the store's inventory system. "He's not what I expected," her mother had confessed when they had a moment alone. "He's real. And he looks at you like you hung the moon." Those words had stayed with Sophia, confirming what she felt in her heart, that what she and Connor had built together was genuine and lasting. As summer turned to fall, Sophia's literacy tour kept her busy and often traveling. Connor joined her when he could, but his own responsibilities sometimes made that impossible. They managed the separations well, with daily video calls and texts throughout the day, sharing the small moments that made up their lives even when apart. It was during one such separation, as Sophia was overseeing the Chicago event, that Connor called with unusual urgency. "Can you come home a day early?" he asked without preamble. "There's something important I need to discuss with you." Alarm rippled through her. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine," he assured her quickly. "Better than fine. I need to see you for this conversation. In person." Intrigued and slightly concerned, Sophia rearranged her schedule, delegating the final wrap-up to her capable assistants, and caught a red-eye back to Seattle. Connor was waiting at the airport despite the early hour, his face lighting up when he spotted her coming through the gates. "This must be serious if you're at SeaTac at 5 a.m., she said after he'd greeted her with a lingering kiss. "It is," he confirmed, taking her carry-on bag and leading her toward the parking garage. "But it can wait until we're home and you've had some sleep." Sophia studied his face, trying to decipher his mood. He seemed excited but also nervous, an unusual combination for Connor, who is typically self-assured in all things. When they arrived home, Sophia was too curious to sleep despite her exhaustion from the overnight flight. "Whatever it is, just tell me," she said as they entered the penthouse. "You're making me nervous." Connor took a deep breath, guiding her to sit on the couch. "I've been offered an incredible opportunity," he began, "a chance to expand our healthcare AI to developing countries, starting with clinics in Southeast Asia and eventually across Africa." "Connor, that's amazing!" Sophia exclaimed, genuinely thrilled for him. "It's everything you've been working toward." "It is," he agreed, his blue eyes intense. "But there's a catch. I'd need to relocate to Singapore for at least a year to oversee the initial implementation and establish the regional headquarters." Sophia felt her heart sink slightly. A year apart would be challenging, especially now that they'd grown so accustomed to sharing their lives. But she wouldn't stand in the way of something this important. "We can make it work," she said, squeezing his hand. "Plenty of couples do long distance for a while. I can visit when my schedule allows. And you can come back for—" "That's not what I'm asking," Connor interrupted gently. He slid off the couch onto one knee, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. "Sophia Blackburn, I'm asking if you'll marry me and come to Singapore as my wife." Sophia's breath caught as he opened the box to reveal a stunning but tasteful ring, a sapphire surrounded by small diamonds, set in platinum. It was exactly what she would have chosen herself, elegant without being ostentatious. "I know it's a lot to ask," Connor continued when she didn't immediately respond. "Your business is here, your life is here. But I don't want to do any of it without you. We can figure out the logistics together. Your work can be adapted for international clients, or you can take a sabbatical, or whatever makes you happy. I just know that I want to build this next chapter with you." Tears filled Sophia's eyes, not from sadness or conflict, but from the overwhelming certainty of her answer. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes to marrying you, yes to Singapore, yes to figuring it out together." Connor's face broke into a smile of such pure joy that it made her heart ache. He slipped the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit, and then pulled her into his arms, his kiss conveying everything words couldn't. I love you, he murmured against her lips, more than I ever thought possible. I love you too, she replied, holding him close, enough to follow you across the world. They spent the day in a bubble of happiness, ignoring work emails and phone calls, talking about their future, the wedding they would plan. Small and intimate, they agreed. The adventure awaiting them in Singapore. The life they would build together. As evening fell, they stood on the balcony watching the city lights come alive, Sophia's ring catching the dying sunlight. Connor wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, feeling the contented sigh that moved through her body. "I'm thinking about that night at the gala," Sophia replied, leaning back against him. "How embarrassed I was when I fainted. How I had no idea that the stranger catching me was about to change my life." Connor pressed a kiss to the side of her neck. "Best moment of my life, when you fell right into my arms. As if the universe knew exactly what I needed before I did." Sophia turned in his embrace, looking up at the man who had become her partner, her champion, her home. Who knew that fainting could lead to forever? "I think I knew," Connor said softly. "Not consciously, perhaps. But something in me recognized you immediately, not just as a beautiful woman who needed catching, but as the person I'd been waiting for without realizing I was waiting." As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms high above the city where they'd met, Sophia thought about the journey that had brought them here, from a moment of weakness at a charity gala to a promise of shared strength for whatever lay ahead. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was better. It was real, built on mutual respect and genuine love, not titles or bank accounts. And as Connor kissed her beneath the emerging stars, Sophia knew with absolute certainty that sometimes the most extraordinary love stories begin in the most unexpected ways, like fainting into the arms of a billionaire who was already falling for her.